Chapter 1: The Letter with the Peacock Seal. It was a Tuesday morning, grey and damp, when Hercule Poirot received the letter. The rain dripped steadily along the wrought-iron railing of Whitehaven Mansions, and London lay swaddled in a wet blanket of respectable gloom. Poirot, however, was in fine spirits. He had just completed his usual breakfast, a perfectly boiled egg, toast cut precisely, and a tisane with a curl of lemon. His moustaches were immaculate. His patent leather shoes, polished the night before, gleamed even in the dull light. In all, a most satisfactory start to the day. He was sorting his correspondence when he came upon the envelope. At first glance, it seemed unremarkable, cream parchment of unusually heavy stock. But the seal was curious, green wax, pressed with the emblem of a peacock, its tail flared in full and extravagant display. The sort of thing, Poirot thought, that one might expect from a certain kind of royalty, fond of symbolism and more fond of display. He turned it over thoughtfully. The postmark was foreign, faint, and in some script not quite decipherable. The handwriting, however, was neat and European, rounded, precise, with a slant that bespoke formality. The address was to him, of course. Monsieur Hercule Poirot, 203 Whitehaven Mansions, London W1. With the delicacy of a surgeon, Poirot took up his letter opener and broke the seal. There was nothing more. No signature, no explanatory postscript. No indication of what the matters of grave concern might be: a murder, theft, treason, or something more arcane. Only the seal and the letter. And, Poirot thought, the very deliberate omission of details. He folded the paper with a small frown and placed it beside his saucer. Then he reached for his moustache comb.
To Monsieur Hercule Poirot, you are respectfully invited to the palace of Jharwahal by His Highness Maharaja Bimalendra Singh. There are matters of grave concern within the royal household which require both discretion and genius. Passage has been arranged. A retainer will call for you within 48 hours. Delay is not advisable. In service, M. Singh, Vizier to His Highness.
A palace, he murmured. A vizier? A matter of great urgency. Mon ami. What can it mean? By mid-afternoon, he had completed his preparations. His travel case was packed, 3 suits, immaculately pressed, his evening wear, 2 pairs of shoes, 6 handkerchiefs, monogrammed, his grooming implements, a bottle of cologne, and a small revolver in a velvet-lined case. He rarely travelled with a weapon. But the letter had unsettled him, not by what it said, but by what it did not. And Hercule Poirot, whose little grey cells were seldom mistaken, had learned to trust his instincts when they stirred. When the retainer arrived the next morning, a tall, silent man in a navy-blue jacket and white turban, Poirot was ready. He gave one last look around his flat, nodded once, and followed the man downstairs. They drove to Southampton in silence. Poirot passed the journey not with idle chatter but with thought. India, exotic, vast, unpredictable. He had never visited. And yet something in the tone of the letter suggested this was no mere invitation to consult on a domestic indiscretion or a minor theft. At the docks, he was ushered aboard a ship, a great white steamer, the Caledonia Star, without fuss or formalities. The suite was grand, almost embarrassingly so, with brass fittings and heavy teakwood and a steward who knew his name before Poirot had introduced himself. Someone, Poirot noted, had taken great pains. The kind of pains one does not take unless the matter is most serious indeed. The voyage was uneventful. Poirot read, played a few quiet games of chess with a retired colonel, and once, very discreetly, watched a wealthy American girl throw a fit when denied champagne at breakfast. He dined modestly, observed carefully, and spoke only when he wished to. India was approaching. Each evening, the air grew warmer. The sea turned from steel to sapphire. and Poirot began to feel that peculiar sensation that had accompanied him on only a handful of occasions in his life, the sense that he was not being called to a puzzle, but drawn into something much larger, much older. The kind of thing that had its own rules, and did not care much whether you understood them. On the 12th morning, the ship docked in Bombay. The heat was oppressive, but Poirot bore it with dignity. At the gangway, a man waited, tall, brown-skinned, impeccably dressed in a cream-colored linen suit with a crimson turban.
"I am Nikhil Raj," he said with a small bow. "His Highness's emissary." "You are most welcome, Monsieur Poirot."
Poirot inclined his head. "Merci. I trust your master is in good health?"
"That," said the man, "depends on how one defines health."
And with that, he turned on his heel and led Poirot through the jostling chaos of the docks, coolies shouting, women selling garlands of jasmine, the scent of curry and diesel thick in the air, toward a waiting motor car. Poirot paused, just once, to look back at the harbour. The ship, gleaming in the sunlight, looked almost unreal. He had crossed the sea, and whatever waited in Jharwahal was no longer just a question. It was a destiny,